Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I am Miss Danda, and we're going to discuss about the cognitive views of learning. So after discussion of the chapter, we will be able to first define learning according to the cognitive theory. Second, describe the information processing model. Third, explain the declarative, procedural, and conditional knowledge in long-term memory. Fourth, explain metacognition and its relationship to learning. Fifth, discuss the role of diversity in information. And sixth, describe the classroom applications of cognitive learning theory. So when we talk about the cognitive views, we relate this to cognitive theory. So cognitive theory defines learning as a relatively enduring change in mental structures that occurs as a result of the interaction of an individual with the environment. So unlike the behaviorists, cognitive psychologists argue that learning takes place in the mind. Therefore, behavior is of interest not in itself, but rather as a way to infer whether and how students' mental structures have changed. So the human mind has been compared to a black box because, unfortunately, it is impossible to open up our heads and see how we think. So to help us see the mind in action, there is this model called the information processing model. So it is the classic model used by cognitive psychologists to explain cognition. So the said model is used to explain how individuals acquire, store, retrieve, and use information. It includes three memory systems. So first is the sensory memory. So it holds information in its original form for half a second to 3. So it involves attention and perception. Second is we have the short-term or the working memory. So this is where information has been attended to and perceived is held temporarily and is being processed. So holding information in working memory is a necessary but not a sufficient condition to warrant learning. So this involves storing and encoding. So storing is a cognitive process by which a copy of new information is saved into our long-term memory. So next is we have encoding. So encoding is a cognitive process by which new information is elaborated or organized and has been saved into our long-term memory. And then the opposite process of storing and encoding is what we call as retrieval. So retrieval is pulling information from our long-term memory into our working memory for further processing. So next is we have the long-term memory. So long-term memory has unlimited capacity and duration. So how do we store and encode information in long-term memory? First is we have rehearsal. So rehearsal is repeating new information for a long period of time, either mentally or aloud, without changing it. So for example, you're writing a mathematical formula or rehearsing multiplication tables aloud. Second is we have elaboration. So elaboration is using prior knowledge to expand on a new idea. For example, answering a high-order question and using analogical thinking. And then we also have organization. So organization is imposing order and connections to new information. So for example, we present concept maps. So on the other hand, long-term memory is also classified as declarative, procedural, or conditional knowledge. So declarative knowledge can be used in a schemata or propositional networks, and it can be subdivided into two specialized memories. So first is we have the semantic memory, or the general knowledge about the world. So for example, we all know that the rainbow consists of 7 colors: the red, orange, yellow, blue, indigo, and violet. Next is we have the episodic memory, or the knowledge about our own life experiences. For example, we can obviously remember the school we're attending to when we are still in elementary or high school. So next is we have the procedural knowledge. So procedural knowledge, this is knowing how. So a student uses his procedural knowledge when engaging in an automatic task. For example, we would be typing an essay on computer, provided that typing has been practiced for so long that it has become an automatic procedure and the student does not need to consciously control it any longer. So next is we have the conditional knowledge. So conditional knowledge is knowing when and why to apply declarative and procedural knowledge. So that's all about the information processing model. So in cognitive use of learning, we also have this term metacognition. So metacognition adds a prefix to cognition, and the prefix meta comes from the Greek, which means about. Thus, metacognition is an individual's condition about his or her cognition, or knowing about knowing. So it includes two components: the knowledge of cognition and the control of cognition. So in this case, we can encourage learning by using metacognitive strategies such as completing self-tests or using journals. So the information processing model biological differences, and individuals' cultural and linguistic backgrounds. So in planning instruction and assessment, teachers should also be sensitive to the limitations in students' working memory capacity. So when instruction is at rapid pace or too much information is conveyed to students at any time, working memory at any time could become exhausted and learning will occur, and that's the case of having a cognitive overload. So there are some useful strategies to prevent students' cognitive overload and promote learning. So first is chunking. So chunking is the process of combining separate items into larger interconnected units. Second is we have the dual processing. So this is combining the visual and the auditory information. So for example, listening to an audiobook while reading aloud on a book could help us understand the story of what we are reading. Next is we have pacing. So pacing is breaking down a larger instruction unit into smaller segments or by allowing students to learn at their own pace. For example, we can learn new songs by learning each verse separately before practicing the entire piece. And the last is practicing. So practicing is repeatedly performing skills until they become automatic. So that's all about the cognitive use of learning. So we have the information processing model, sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And we also have the metacognition about chunking, dual processing, pacing, and practicing. So next meeting, we will have an activity regarding things we have discussed today, so be prepared. That's all.